Why do you say that, Father? You aren't afraid, are you?
No, but I respect some of the superstitions of others. Often they are founded in fact.
Broadcasting live from our Sanctum Sanctorum in Venice, California. This is the Sixth Sense Society. I'm your host, Krista, here with our producer, Michael. And today we continue the theme of love, paranormal style for February with our guest, Madame Zulema, and a topic of love spells. But first, Michael has some announcements.
Hey, everybody. Thank you again for supporting our show. We keep growing our audience and our subscribers, and we're very, very grateful. Get all the information about the show on our website, sixthsensesociety.com. It's all spelled out, SIXTH. And we're on Facebook and Instagram, especially our Instagram. Krista does a great job with that. And our live chat will be up. So if you have questions on love spells for Madame Zulema, then please just let us know, and I'll be happy to pass them along during the show. Just a couple of quick look at what we have coming up. For those of you who don't do well with relationships for Valentine's Day, we have our good friend, relationship therapist Merle Yost, that's joining us next week. And he's going to talk about healthy relationships and boundaries and things of that nature. And he's a terrific guy, so we're excited to have him back. Krista's new segment, Spell It Out, will sort of end the month. And the next month, we have some great shows coming up. We have our good friend Humberto back to talk about his site that he's creating for networking psychics and mystics and healers and all kinds of different cool people. And so he's going to join us to talk about that. We have our good friend Eric joining us, who's going to talk about some Christian prophecy, and especially as it relates to some very interesting things like the destruction of our society. And he's a cool dude, and so that should be a lot of fun. And some of you guys that are into a lot of conspiracy theory stuff, well, not that I'm saying that I don't think I would call him a conspiracy theorist, but nonetheless, it'll sort of appeal to a lot of you guys, so join us for that. And then our good friend Jim McGrath will be back to talk about St. Patrick and who was the real St. Patrick, since it's St. Patrick's Day. So like us and subscribe, and we're just so grateful for all of you. So without further ado, I'm going to kick it back to Krista and Madame Zulema, and have a great show, guys. And I'm sure I'm going to have some questions to ask, so take it away.
Great. Thank you, Michael. And welcome.
Thank you.
We're so happy to have you here.
I'm happy to be here. Thank you.
So why don't you tell us a little bit about your background first?
Oh, wow. Okay. Do we have all day? No.
High points?
Well, I was born in New Orleans, and my brother too. And after a year of being in New Orleans, I was 1.5 years old, my parents decided to buy a farm in Guatemala. So we all flew back to Guatemala, and I grew up there. And then I came back to the States when I was about 24. And I've been going back and forth. And about 10 years ago, I settled here. I'm a little bit of a wanderer. I like adventure, and I get bored with the same things. But now I'm getting older, and my mom too, and I live here, and I love it. California is an amazing state. I'm happy to be here. And
It
lucky.
is. The weather is great.
Yes.
So, and how did you get interested in magic in general? Like, what was your first memory of that?
In the farm, we had Mayan indigenous people working for my parents. We had animals and crabs and fruit trees and stuff. And I saw things that at the time I was little, I didn't understand them, but I never got scared. I was just curious. And I remember we had a nana, which means like a nanny. In Latin countries, when you can afford a nana, the parents can work and they practically raise you. And I was lucky to have a wonderful nana. Her name was Berta. And she would take us to her house sometimes when my parents were too busy. And she lived in a very humble hut with a dirt floor. And I remember she was cooking beans in a pot that was clay. and they have different taste. But I remember she was putting a circle around the pot. The fire was under, and she was putting a circle, and then she did a cross with 2 cinnamon sticks, and she tied them with a red ribbon. To this day, I don't know what that meant, and I wish somebody would, if somebody knows what that means, to inform me, because I'm always curious. But since then, I started feeling a curiosity for metaphysics and the occult and rituals. And another experience I had when I was about 7 years old, there is a folk story about someone called it's a midget guy with a huge hat. It's called el sombrerón. Sombrero means hat, sombrerón was a big hat. And supposedly he comes to virgins and looks at them at the window and he lures them. That's the folk tale, the story about it. But I saw him. And I was 7 years old, and I told my mom, there's a little man with a big hat outside my window. And I remember my mom took me to the church. And she said, we have to pray because he's after you. And that scared me. I never saw him again.
Well, it must have worked in the prayer.
Probably. But little things like that. And you see indigenous people working with the earth and the seasons and natural things like plants and herbs and animals and insects. And I saw that all the time because my parents were, farm is a lot of work. And we spent a lot of time there and mostly with these people. And I learned a lot of stuff from them. That's how I started.
Those are great stories.
Yeah.
I love it.
Thank you.
So it does seem like love spells are probably, besides prosperity, really popular. Mm-hmm. And maybe it'd be good for us to know what you consider a spell. Like, what to you is casting a spell? What is the components of it? Because I think everyone's a little different with that, what they call a spell.
Yeah, there's a lot of varieties. It depends on your background. If you are an American Indian, or if you're a Buddhist, or if you are European, Celtic, Mayan, Hindu, there's so many things. But what makes a spell, I think, is the first thing is your intention. What is your intention to make that spell? Is it comes from your heart? Is it for selfish reasons? That's the first ingredient. And then is the will. After that, you have allies, which are spices and candles and oils and herbs, incantations, rose petals, etc. And it all works in an energetic level. Everything has energy and vibration, like we know that. And if we understand vibration and waves, like, for example, if you think of a radio wave, you turn on the radio and you hear the music, but you don't see the waves coming through you. That's magic right there. Mm-hmm. And so spells work the same way. It affects us and it goes through us. For example, if I have a positive thought about someone that I care about, that person receives that thought and feels it, and vice versa. So I believe in energy, intention, will, and also spiritual guides. You can use saints or spiritual guides or some family members that have passed away. Mm-hmm. That also helps. And read a lot of books.
We were talking about that at the beginning of the show. I just brought in like 3 different books for inspiration mostly, and how beautiful a lot of the love spell books are. And reading through them, some of them are very delightful. You know, I have one that's a Victorian spell book, and it's written, I guess her grandmother was Victorian, the woman that put it together. And I really enjoyed just reading the book, actually. I realized, and I also realized that a lot of love spells are very natural. Mm-hmm. You think of maybe them being, really obscure, but there's some things we do very naturally that, to me, it's really spell work.
Yes. Talking about very natural, I feel there's a lot of people that get obsessed with the ritualistic side of it. For example, they read in a book to wear a certain thing. Like, there's people that go all the way out with a lot of rituals. And you can do that if you like, if it's your personal taste. But also, the most simplistic spells also work. For example, sending somebody a spell by mouth, by word, like saying, lover, come to me. Remember when we were together, and visualizing when you were together and all that energy. And simple spells could be just lighting a pink candle. You don't need a lot of exotic herbs and stuff and spend a lot of money. But if you want, like I say, you can. There's so many things out there. You have a lot of things you can work with in your kitchen, like clover, cinnamon sticks, pepper, if you want to bring somebody away, or chilies. You put it in the spells to get someone away. Sometimes you don't want the person next to you, and you say, how can I get rid of him without hurting him? So you do a spell with peppers and chilies and lemons to bring the person to not hate you, but to stop loving you. There's a lot of things that you can do. But the simplest spells work also. It depends on your commitment and your will and your discipline.
And maybe, I don't know if it's because I'm a sign of Cancer, but mine do well when I really feel it. When a lot of feeling is involved in it. And I was thinking maybe that's different according to your personality too. Like if you're a very feely oriented person. But I've noticed that it really makes a huge difference, the feeling part.
Oh yeah. The feeling part makes a big difference because it's energy also. For example, when you walk into a room and somebody looks at you with a big smile, you feel that, right? Or if somebody looks at you frowning, you're feeling, that's a feeling right there. You're feeling the other person's energy. So yeah, feelings have a lot to do with it, and intention and experience.
So you did bring in some beautiful equipment, and let's start with some of the spells that you like to do.
Okay. One of my favorite spells is when couples have had a rough time and they have separated a little bit, or the relationship has cooled down. But let me tell you something. I love to make my own candles, to make it personal. Use beeswax and natural substances if you can, because that makes it more powerful in my point of view. But if you cannot do that and you don't have the time or you don't know how to do it, you can buy these candles that I brought, that they're figurine candles, and I don't know if they can see them, but there's a woman. And this is called Adam and Eve because they're naked. There's some figure candles that have a dress on. Okay. And that is a different energy that you put into it. But Adam and Eve is to attract new love or to rekindle new love. And they're naked, and you can see the woman has breasts and round hips and long hair. And the male is more like a male. Right?
And they're pink, these ones.
And they're pink because this is to rekindle a relationship that was already existent. And when you do... To do that, one simple spell is I usually have a tray that's square and white. Don't use colors. If you can, use white or clear. And square, because what you're going to do is you're going to place the figurines. Oh, before you do that, if you bought them in the store, put some incense around them, clearing the energy because somebody else must have touched them, and they are producing mass products. So you want them to be clean. And what you do is, if you have the picture of your lover or your husband, some hair, nail clippings, body fluids, you can do a lot with this. So you carve a hole with a pointed knife at the bottom, take the wax out, and put in the male candle your intention. It could be an intention paper writing, remember when we loved each other, how passionate we were, you're still in love with me, but you forgot, and all these beautiful things. And some herbs like fenugreek, you can put cinnamon, and then with that wax, you put it back and you pass some match so it will seal it. Something else you can do is with a nail, a knife, or a pen, you write your lover's name in the back. So what you're doing is you're making this candle the personification of your lover or husband. Then you give it life with your breath. And you say, John Doe, remember that we're in love. And you blow on the face. You already made it alive. This is a live human being. And you put it in one extreme. And you do the same in the other candle. You say, we love each other. And you put probably a picture when you were together in happy times with some herbs that also help. And then your name, and you place it in the other extreme. Then what you do is you get your herbs, the ones that are supposed to unite people. There's a lot of them out there. I use fenugreek because fenugreek is it has a lot of qualities, but one of them is to make peace and to bring people together. Then I have dry roses, and if you have kept, somebody gives you flowers, keep the petals. And then you put like this, what I'm doing here is building a road. So I put roses in front of them.
So you're basically laying them between the two figurines.
Yes, and there in between them there's the rose petals and the spices. You can also put there's many spices. I forgot right now all of them, but there's a lot of them. There is petals and herbs and oils, and also there's oils. For example, I have an oil here that I like to use, which is called attraction oil. And what you can do is put a little drop in your palm before you set the candle down, and you embrace the candle with your hand, and you swirl it around like this, upwards motion, and you do the same thing with the female candle because you want to attract them together. Then you get a match. I love to use matches, not lighters. You light the match and you light the candle saying, "Lover, come back to me," or whatever you want. What is your intention? Or let's rekindle our love, or let's have that honeymoon. And then you light the female candle and you flicker the match like this. Never blow it. In Hoodoo tradition, when you blow something, you're undoing it. So always flicker it. Then what you do is each day you move them an inch closer. So, and you do the same incantation, right? At the end of your spell, they're going to end up like this. See, each other are going to be seeing like that. And usually, by the time they're together, the heads have melted. And there's also something called ceromancy, which means reading the wax and the candles. Sometimes you see that when the figurines are getting closer, let's say, for example, the male candle burns in half and the back goes backwards and the front from the chest goes inwards. And what that say to you is that the person is not making a decision yet. It's cut in half, doesn't know should I be with her or not. The person is not decided. If the candle burns completely to the front, the person is willing to come back and rekindle. Sometimes that happens to the woman too. She wants to do the spell, but in reality, she's thinking about it. Maybe I don't want to be with him again, you know? Sometimes couples are already getting separated without knowing it. And the spell confirms it. But what we want is to, of course, unite people, and this is the purpose of this spell. Then at the end, they're going to melt together with the herbs and the petals, and you save that. You save it, and you either put it away in your nightstand in your lingerie closet, or you bury it in a pot if you have a garden, do it in a garden with a beautiful plant on top to grow, so that will grow, or you burn it. If you want to undo that in the future, you have to gather the wax again and put it like in where you do in a burner, or you throw it into the trash in a paper bag and you undo it. So, but when you do a love spell, keep the wax and the herbs together. Never get rid of it. That is one of my favorites.
And so when they're burning down, can you turn the flame down so you don't leave it alone in the house? And
Very
if you do,
good question.
How would you do it?
Very good question. Let's say you have to go out and you don't want to leave the candles burning. Some people, you know what they do? They put a cookie tray in the bathtub and they leave it and they never touch it. But if you need to go out and you want to be safe, muff the candle like this with a glass or never
so you're not
blow
blowing
it. If you blow it, you blew the whole thing away. And then when you come back at night, you light the candle again and you do the ritual again. So that's one way of doing it.
That's beautiful. It even looks beautiful.
Yes, it's very pretty to look at. And also, it's important that you get into the mood. Put some music. Remember the times you were together and when you were in love, because you're infusing them into your ritual and your candles.
So this is kind of an odd thought I had while you were saying this, but I've noticed that people put their spells on Instagram while they're doing it.
Oh.
And not as an example of I'm teaching you a spell and this is an example, but they're actual spells for somebody. And I would have thought that might make it less effective because of people's unconscious energy on it. What do you think
jealousy.
about that?
I agree with you. I think your spells should be personal and secret. Nobody should see it. That's why some people cannot do it at home and they hire hoodoo root workers, because we have altars in our homes so we can do that for the client. And the person sends you pictures and personal things from the other person. But to put him on Instagram, for me, is a little bit tricky because there's jealousy and there's... if you're doing a class, teaching it, it's okay. But if you're doing it for a client or for you, I would prefer to keep it secret just for yourself, to have it so it has more power. Yeah. There is a book out there called The Power of Silence. And it says that when you're doing a ritual or when you're doing a plan, don't say it until it comes into fruition.
Right.
So I believe in that.
Yeah, and I think maybe if it was a community spell that everybody could participate in, you had some, benign world peace spell, and even then, I suppose you would still get people that don't want world peace,
Yes.
But it might kind of weigh out, the difference. I had another question about that. Oh, about doing spells for others. So you do spells professionally, is that correct?
Yes, I do.
And what do you think, if somebody was looking for someone to do a professional spell, as you know, there are more fraudulent people that participate in that, and how do people find the real deal without being taken advantage of thousands and thousands of dollars? Because we know we've had a couple clients, one it was up $20,000 to...
Wow.
Oh, we're talking about serious fraud. And but they do a lot of the candle love spells. And so the people, of course, are very vulnerable around love, and everybody wants love and of some kind, and usually most of it's romantic. So what would you tell someone if they were looking for a legitimate person to do a spell for them, whether it's love or prosperity that would be fair and also ethical? What would they look for?
Word of mouth. When somebody tells you this person did a spell for me, that's the best. You can pay Google and get in the front of the search. And that, sadly, if you have the money to pay to advertise, you look like you're popular and that you are very coveted. But it doesn't mean anything. Word of mouth, I think, is the best, number one. Number two is if you are being asked big quantities of money, is a red flag. Another one is making the person think that you're the only one that can help them. And that's not true. Because I think that magic starts in your psychic, like we know. And you can also do your own spells. But people don't have the space in their house, or they have children, or they live with a roommate. That's when they hire a hoodoo worker. Spells have a variety of prices. But when it goes into the thousands of dollars, it doesn't seem right to me. It seems to me a little odd. And I have heard even $50,000. I have a story about that.
Oh.
Oh, yeah. An actress.
Really? So
yes.
Let us know the story.
Okay. I was picked up by... I was hired by an actress. And she was a popular soap opera actress. She was in her 60s when I met her. And I was supposed to be in a parking lot in Hollywood, and I forgot what the area, but a car picked me up. That must have been her bodyguard or something, and they took me to this hotel. And then I went into her room and I met her. I didn't know who she was because I don't see soap operas in English, and she was asking me to read the cards for her, the tarot, and if I could do a spell. She met this man online. This man used to work in Australia, but then he said to her something like he was in a platform in the ocean for petroleum. He was an engineer. And he would tell her that he wanted to be with her, but his work didn't allow it. So she hired a spell worker, a root worker. And she told me that, to make sure the long story short, that in the course of the spell and the things that person wanted from her, she spent $50,000. And I looked at her with disbelief. This was an actress, a mature woman, beautiful. and I told her in my car reading, how do you know this man exists? Because you've only seen a picture. You have never seen him on Facebook on Instagram. No, that was not Instagram at the time. It was Skype. And the story was that he was in an ocean platform. That's why the Skype didn't work. That was a red flag already. So she never saw this person, just a photograph. And I said to her, how do you know this is not a bald, fat guy in a little room telling you all these things, right? This went on for 6 months. And he would tell her, oh, they robbed my passport and I wanted to see you, but I need money to do this. It's all kinds of lies. But she was so lonely because her job didn't give her time to find a relationship that she believed all these things. And she shelled out $50,000 in the course of 6 months.
Wow.
That is scary, right?
Wow.
So be careful when somebody asks you for big quantities of money or makes you feel that there's no hope unless you're with them.
So let's talk a little bit about the gray areas of love spells. There's in spell work in general, there's different traditions that believe different things. And I would say the Wiccan tradition is not harming anyone. Mm-hmm. And even Aleister Crowley talks about not interrupting someone's will, that he said any way in which you try to overpower someone's will is black magic. And that's coming from Aleister Crowley.
Yeah.
So it seems from reading the books and from some of the hoodoo stuff and other kinds of traditions that many love spells are totally willing to do that, to break just, I want that person and, let's do a spell on that person. So how do you feel about that?
Personally, I have not done that. I believe in the law of cause and effect. And I believe if you do harm to someone else, sooner or later it's going to catch up with you. But some people they don't tell you the whole truth. They tell you, this is a man that's with this woman and he doesn't love her and she's abusive and he wants to leave her but he can't. And I want you to help me to do that. So also you get caught. And my feeling is, I say a metaphysical prayer at the end of my spells, which is, do good to all and not harming none, which means the spell is going to do good to all the people that are participant. If somebody's getting divorced and it's good for them and he's in love with another woman or she's in love with another man, all of them it's a win-win situation. They all have to have a benefit. If you are going to cause pain to someone else to get the benefit of a relationship with someone, you're going to pay the price. Life gets back at you. And I have seen it.
Yes, I think that's particularly true about the heart. It's a tricky business for sure.
Yes.
It's like in the movie Practical Magic, what happens in that movie where the spell goes wrong and he becomes like obsessed with, I think it's Nicole Kidman's character. It's been a long time since I've seen it, and they can't stop him. And I was looking at this really delightful book. There's a whole series called Witches Brew Good Spells for Love, and I love these little books. And she says at the very beginning, she said, I think I can remember it, that she did a spell for her friend and she didn't really, I guess, know the power of the spell, and ended up the guy started chasing after her, so she lost her friend, and she was not at all interested in him, but somehow her spell had backfired a little bit. So she was saying that that was early on, and to be careful because spells are powerful. And I would say that probably that's the most true for love, because love is so emotional and it's backed by all that emotion. So I think, I don't know if you have your own personal stories about spells gone wrong, but I do.
Yes, I do. I have a couple of them.
Would you like to share some?
Sure. It's a spell that I have. I did one, and the other one somebody else did it, and it was a close friend of mine. The first one that I did is this woman that she wanted her boyfriend back. He hasn't been around for 8 months, but she wanted him back, and they kind of were in touch a little bit. So I said to her, are you sure you want this man back? What is your intention, really? And usually I do a tarot reading, and then I tell the person, what is your intention? Why don't you meditate on this and think clearly, why do you want him back? And she said, because I love him. I can't be without him. I have not met another man like him. So we did a spell. He came back after a few weeks, And she was happy. And 3 months later, the same person told me, Zulema, please help me. I don't know how to get rid of him. So I thought, but you wanted to be with him, and now you say you want to get rid of him. You can't stand him because he was very loving and very needy. She forgot that, because when we put distance from a lover or a husband, we tend to forget the bad things. Why did we get separated? We tend to just remember the good things because we start getting lonely and all this. But I explained to her to undo something is harder than to do it. So I told her, you're going to have to do it yourself. You need a lot of willpower and discipline, and good luck to you, because it's very exhausting to undo a spell. It takes a lot of energy and commitment. So that's one of the spells that went wrong, but not terribly wrong. Another one happened to a friend of mine. And this is a long time ago, before I even knew about hoodoo, in my 20s. My friend got married to this man. I had 2 children with him. And he worked in a company, and suddenly he fell in love with his secretary. He started coming home late, treating my friend really bad. Short story, I came to the United States and I lost touch with her. Then I came back a few years and I saw her back with him. And I said, what happened? Because he left her to live with the other woman. And he actually had 2 children with the other woman. And she says, I did something wrong. I want you to read the cards for me. What can I do? I started to do tarot. Always done tarot. I love it. And what happens is she went to a curandera in Guatemala in the mountains. And these people are serious stuff. And what she did was something called the burial. The burial is a vessel where you bury a person. So she asked my friend about photographs of her husband, personal things like nail clippings or hair or something from his shirt or a little piece of an underwear, all those things. She put it in my friend told me that what she remembered, she put it in a flask, and it's supposed to represent a coffin. Then what the woman did is bury him with my friend, and she tied them together. Well, short story. He came back with my friend, but the marriage was horrible. He treated her terrible. They slept in different rooms. He wasn't kind. He would always from work go to see the other woman that she tried to separate them. And then he would come late at night to sleep over. And if she was awake, he would treat her like trash. So those are spells that turn out bad. So if someone doesn't want to be with you, I advise you to make peace with it and give the opportunity to a new person to come and really love you the right way.
And that's a good point. There's different aspects to love spells. So for instance, when I was just reading these little delightful books, there's also treating a broken heart, spells for that, which I thought was very sweet. And some of them are really simple, I noticed,
Like, tell me about the ones that you...
Well, there was one that they just had a combination of oils, and you make it up for your friend, and then you give them like a little back rub and neck rub, and it was, and I think they might have said maybe a couple words, and usually, I mean, most everything has some words because words are incantations, but it was really simple and very touching, and I would think, well, if my friend did that for me, I would definitely feel good just because they did that. They cared enough, let alone the magic of the smells, and so I think that was one. And also, don't you think sometimes people also want friendships? Have you ever had someone come and ask for like a best friend? I've had it in a tarot reading where people want new friends. And
you mean they have been lovers and they just want to be friends with new people?
Love, we think of love as just romantic love, but there are people that also want to have new friendships. Like they've left let's say they're recovering addicts and all their friends were addicts and they need new friends in their life and they're lonely for friends. And I've had at least people ask tarot questions about that. Are there spells for friendship?
I have never had that experience. What I have been asked is, I'm going to divorce my husband and I want us to be friends. That I've been asked. Or my boyfriend and I are having a hard time. I love him. I want to help him. How can we become friends? But not new.
Just separate.
No.
Yeah. No, I think that's equally important because love is ruled by Venus. Exactly. And in both Kabbalah and in the palm, there's the high aspect of Venus is brotherhood, and that people forget it. Venus represents all kinds of love. love of your pet,
Yes.
everything.
Yes.
And of course, romantic love is associated with spell work, I think.
Yes, but also romantic love with time becomes friendship. If you think about, there are couples. I'm going to tell you. Can I tell you a story?
Sure.
A few years ago, I was in Rome, Italy, and we were with some women in a workshop about spells and tarot. And I met this interesting woman. She was amazing, and she had a relationship for about 2 years, but the men didn't want to commit. They love each other. It was clear they were very compatible, and she did a ritual that I never saw in my life, and it stuck to me, and I think it's beautiful and sweet. What she did was she bought 2 pears, and she peeled the pears, and then she cut them in half and halved them. She took the seeds out, and then she switched the halves. So each pear had half of the other. She left that in the kitchen. She put them in a pan, and then she went to her bathroom and she took a shower. She cleaned herself. Then she drew a bath. In the bath, she put petals of flowers that he had given her, and honey.
Oh,
Honey is moisturizer also,
Right.
and it has energy. And then she stepped into the shower totally naked with a bottle of red wine, and she poured the red wine all over her body, talking to him. Lover, come to me. We want to commit, but you're not sure. And all this beautiful. She was talking in Italian, and at the time I didn't understand much, but it was beautiful to look at. Then when she finished the ritual, she left the bottle of wine with a little bit of wine in it, and she submerged herself, and she started caressing herself, talking to him. Remember that night, and that we talked about marriage and all these things. Then she got up, dried herself up, picked up the bottle of wine, and came to the kitchen. She poured the wine on the pears, and also she got a cup of the water from her bath and poured it all over the pears. She added more honey, a candle, cinnamon stick, anise seed, and some other things that I don't remember what they were. And then she simmered it for 15 minutes, and all that becomes very thick, and the pears become red with the wine. She did a beautiful dinner. She put her makeup, dressed up beautiful. I went home, and she did a dinner for her lover. They were having a date, and the dessert were the pears with the drizzling of the liquid.
Beautiful.
They're married, and they have been married for a long time. They're older now. They're a beautiful couple. They're friends. It was meant to be also. But that ritual really stuck to me. It was gorgeous.
Oh, wow. That is
Yes.
a beautiful story. I think
Yes.
Michael has a comment or question.
Yeah, one thing I just wanted to mention real quick, guys. We talk a lot about ethics when it comes to magic. And of course, I think one of the great rules is be careful what you wish for always. And I think love spells to sort of enhance a relationship, maybe rekindle love a little bit, draw closer, I think is wonderful. And things of that nature. But it's always, or just if you want love in general, and I think, attract the lover that's right for me. But I think it gets a little difficult for me ethically, I guess, when you're trying to force a person to love you. I'm going to make this person love me, and to me, that's when I think when things do go tragically wrong, I think that's usually when that happens. And I don't know if I've ever seen that kind of a love spell have a really good positive outcome. So I wonder what Zulema thinks about that.
I totally agree with you, Michael. When you're forcing a situation, let me tell you something. Love cannot be defined, really. I don't think we all understand love completely. But love is not a straight line. You don't love continuously. You have to remember that love has ups and downs. And when love has the downs, that's when the work needs to be done. Couples usually get divorced or separated when they have to work at it, because people think it has to be natural and it has to come like wow, like in the movies. Love, in reality, life is not that way. You have to be a good human being and be courteous and loving to the person. When couples separate, there's a lot of reasons why they separate. Sometimes they rekindle, they work their problems, but you cannot force someone. Has it happened before? Is it possible? Yes, it is. Spells are very powerful, depending on the magician. And when I say magician, it's because this is magic, and But to make someone love you and force that person to love you is not easy. You have to be so committed and have such a willpower and be in that set mind every day and work on that person that most people don't have that discipline.
I have love has been a big part of my life from when I was like a little girl, and I came into this world really wanting to understand love. I'm not sure why. I always have since I was really little. So I was in 3rd grade, and there was this boy named Jimmy, and all the girls liked him, and they were all kind of like preening in front of him, and you know, and we're just little girls, right? And we really were just little girls. I remember thinking, like, you know, if Jimmy's gonna like me, he's just gonna like me. I'm not gonna be anything but myself. And I remember not trying to do that, and we became good friends. And he gave me this like bag of marbles, and I remember thinking, wow, I let him go. I just, you know, I didn't try to grasp him. And that idea of being open to someone and letting them come to you, to me, is a very feminine power, personally. And I think that women underestimate. And I think it is a female power, because I think men and women have different polarities. I've had the experience too when I've really been wanting my boyfriend to call me on the phone, and I've just been really wanting him to call, and he would call. But I had to really feel it and really want it, but I didn't force it. Right. It was more like, oh, wouldn't that be great, you know? And so I remember, you know, all these, when I think about it, I do think love, in a way, it's odd that people go for love spells when so much is right in front of us. Like, you know, when you were a little girl, at least when I was, you'd pick up the, was it the daffodil? He loves me, he loves me not. That's
Poor plant.
That's, I know. It's a spell, you know, and there's so many, and giving someone a poem. Yeah. Whether you write it, which of course is, no matter how bad the poem is, even if you write a poem to someone, I can tell you, they love it. People love to have something written to them, or a love letter by hand. And that is a spell in a way, you know?
Absolutely, because the person touches the paper that you had in your hand. That has already a vibration from, let's say, Krista. And she's writing this poem with her heart. That's energy. Then I touch that paper. I have that vibration, and my eyes are looking at it, and then it goes in my third eye. And that's why you have to be careful what you receive also. Some people even spray perfume, and when you open the letter and you go, wow, right?
Yes.
But it's true. It's better to let be. For example, when clients do love spells and they get anxious and they look at the love spell and see if it's working, I give them the example. When you plant a seed, you put a seed in a pot. You put the right dirt, and then you water it, and you say, please grow, and I hope it is. You do it with the moon, and the springtime is coming. You let it be. You're not every night going and trying to pull the seed to grow. It's the same concept. If you like someone, and it's funny because sometimes we feel that a person would never like me, or maybe that person hates me, and it's not true. What it is the person could be shy, or you're over too confident. But you're right. The love spells, the power is female, because we are receptors. We are nurturing. And usually it goes with the heart. With men, it's different. They have a more animalistic force, more conquering.
Right.
So, yeah.
So maybe their way of doing a spell would just be different to be effective. Yeah. Because I mean, and again, we're getting into sort of areas that might have some gray in it, but I have noticed it seemed to me a very natural ability if I could just be very relaxed about it, which I wasn't always, by the way. In fact, I mostly wasn't. And that idea also, what I think it's true of all spells, one of the hardest things for a lot of people is truly letting go of it. You don't even think about it. You just let it go. And that I find is way more effective, but also the way the spell works out can be more magical. Like the way it plays out, not the way you thought it. You're not controlling how it's going to look, you know.
Right. And you just put the intention. I'm sorry to interrupt you.
No, that's fine.
You just put the intention, and then you let it be. Let it work itself out. Don't force it, because you get also anxious and you put anxiety into the spell. So, and if a person does not come to you and you're doing a spell, it's not for you. Have peace with it. Give opportunity to someone else. That's my thinking.
I personally have always stayed away from targeting a person because I've learned, maybe because when I was younger, I picked poorly. And so since I knew I picked poorly, then I was more generic about it after. I just want someone who will love me and will maybe have these characteristics and will want to be monogamous. But I think at least not everyone picks as poorly as some people, but I did. And that was my learning experience. I don't begrudge it at all. So I think that's why I, after a while, kept it very generic. But I will say what was very effective was I had a very dear friend who was a Buddhist, a lovely, lovely woman named Frances. And I didn't have a boyfriend at the time. I was very lonely. And she says, well, I will pray for you. She said, she's Southern. And she says, and by the way, my daughters got their boyfriends that way. And I just wanted a boyfriend. And it worked. I got a boyfriend. And I don't know what she did, but she practiced Buddhism. So mantras can be effective. I think there's something nice when someone prays for you, like it's not like you can't pray for yourself, but it was very lovely. It felt very supportive and, and she just wanted the best for me. And certainly I trusted her to not pray for something that I couldn't handle. But I remember it did work actually. And she was so lovely about the whole thing. She just kind of offered it,
Nice. That reminds me of, are you familiar with Saint Anthony of Padua?
Not much about the saints.
Okay, Saint Anthony of Padua, he's believed to help single women to get a boyfriend or a husband. And he also, you pray to him to find things that you have lost. His day is the 13th of June. And in Central America, we use him a lot, and in Brazil and in Italy. In America, not too much because this is Christian. But let's say the saint statue is this one, and I have my altar. And I don't have a boyfriend. So in Latin America, it is very cruel, they put him in his head on the altar and a candle and the petition paper is very important. And until I get a boyfriend, then I put him up on his feet. In Brazil, they're more respectful. They turn him away from you, facing the wall, and I'm not going to let you see the altar until you get me the boyfriend I want.
Ooh,
so
that's fairly manipulative.
That is an old tradition, and it's Catholic, it's Christian. And it works sometimes, believe me. It's your intention, I think, has the power. But it's interesting. We have a lot of allies that we can use in spells.
Yes.
And it could be perfume. It could be your smile. And I think what works is little details of niceness and gentleness and camaraderie, not you have to love me. Let me tell you a story. There was a woman that wanted her boyfriend back. And in one of the intentions that I asked her, what is your intention? She told me, I want him back because he broke up with me. And when I get him back, I want to break up with him. So it was her ego that was hurt. It wasn't that she wanted him back for love. She wanted the opportunity to break up with him.
She wanted to punish him.
Right. So your intentions count in your love spells. Very important.
Yeah, there is a little tendency. Oh, Michael has a comment here.
Yeah, I wanted to mention something really quick, guys, to echo Madame Zulema's point. I remember flipping through this spell book once, and there was this spell to bring back a cheating partner. My first thought was, why in the hell would you want to? At the end of the day, I mean, this person screwed you over, and now you want to bring them back so they can do it again, And I thought, it just seemed strange that would even be a spell.
Right. Wow. All kinds of things out there.
Well, and you obviously, you read tarot for a living too. And one of the things that I've noticed, I used to pretty much answer any question people would ask about love. And then there was this period where people were coming in and they wanted to know about a person who they had broken up with a year ago, and they wanted to really spy on that person in a relationship. And oftentimes they broke up with that person, by the way.
Wow.
So I started feeling really uncomfortable, and I also feel it's not accurate. I am reading for someone who's not really given me permission. He or she is no longer connected to the person, which I think is fine to do. Mm-hmm. And I felt it was really unethical. And then they would get really kind of, comparing themselves to the other person. And I always saying, hey, it's never about the other person. It's always about you and that person. That other person is separate. You don't know what's going on between the two of them.
Right.
So I stopped answering questions like that. I look at them and say, well, didn't you tell me you broke up with them? Yes, but I want to know.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, I'm not going to answer your question. So I was like, I don't feel comfortable, and I stopped doing that. It's different if they share children, if it was something where they're kind of coming back and forth, they break up, get back together. Sometimes they just want to see how they're doing. I'm okay with that. I just want to know how they're doing,
Yeah.
I'm okay with that, but when they really, they're trying to get in,
Morbid.
invade that person's psychic space. And that seems like, again, an aspect of love that is, to me, or unethical to do that. And that's just how I feel about it.
I feel that what happens also is that a person that does that does not know her value or his value. They don't value themselves. Because the first thing of comparing yourself to the lover of your ex is, and this is very funny, something came in my mind right now. I have clients that they break up with their boyfriends, or the boyfriends break up with their girlfriends. And once they break up and that person starts a new relationship, then they get upset and they want the person back, because what is that woman seeing in him that I didn't see? So that's your ego again and your insecurities. Mm-hmm. And I always say to people that say, I want him back, or why is he with her? Or she's ugly, and look at me. And you look at the person and you say, well, why don't you question the way you were treating that person? And maybe that woman that you say is ugly, because I don't think there's ugly people. It's just different. Maybe the treatment is different. Maybe that person is very loving, very accepting. And I'm going to read a poem about that by Edgar Allan Poe, which is beautiful. And it says, I was never insane except upon occasions when my heart was touched. So love can make you insane.
That's why there's a lot of therapists and card readers and spells, and that is an aspect of being human, I would say. So where can people reach you? So what is it? Your website? I have your website here. Is this one way to reach you? It is Madame Zulema, MADAMEZULEMA .wixsite,
Yes, they can also reach. They can also see my Instagram, Madame Zulema. It's easier
That's
now.
easier.
I think now people use more Instagram.
Yeah, it's definitely becoming more popular.
More accessible. Yes.
So that's the way if you want to do spell work or do a tarot card reading, or I think you also do parties for people with and don't you do some clearings as well, like house clearings? I think. What else?
I do house clearings. I don't do that much because I feel the more things you do, the less you have control over it. And I think experience is more. I can read tons of books. Usually, when I do a spell, I have a journal where I write what I did and the outcome. And I see what spells work and what spells don't. You have to do a lot of research and experience also. You have to have a lot of experience. I do not offer my services if I'm not sure what I'm doing. Clearing houses is something else. That has nothing to do with spells. But if a marriage is having a problem, they move to a new house. I had a couple that they moved to a new house and they were almost getting divorced. The house was beautiful, but the house has history. So I did a clearing, and thank God the couple are still together.
Oh, that's nice.
Yes.
Yeah, I agree with you. You can definitely water yourself out too much. And nowadays, of course, we live longer and we can learn more. Like, you
Thank
can spend
God.
10 years. And but I agree, some people do a little too much of everything, and it's just not quite as effective. It's nice that you watch the effectiveness of the spell, because I do that as well.
I have a journal because I think it's important, so you know what works. And sometimes I add my own. When you're doing a spell, relax and have fun with it, and you can add your own touch. It doesn't have to be by the book.
Absolutely, and that element of play when one does any kind of magic is so important, that if it seems like too arduous from my point of view, I think some complicated spells could be very good for certain personalities. For me, I like the sense of play. And if I get excited about it, like, oh, this is going to be fun, and it does have more of an effect, I've noticed.
Yes.
And getting in touch with that inner child spirit that wants to play with the universe.
Yeah. So you log also the results of your.
I do. I think I got the idea mostly from Susan Weed. She's a wonderful herbalist, and what she was saying was it's almost better to know a few things about herbs deeply.
Yes.
And it really stuck with me. I said, okay, I'm going to do that with everything. Like, I'll only know a little bit about the crystals, but I'll build a relationship with them. I'll get to know them and see what they're like in this place. And I also don't do spells all the time. I just don't feel the need to. And maybe because I've also had some things kind of backfire, I want to, really need to. I kind of respect it. I'm not going to trivialize it. I'm going to do it when I need to, and not all the time. And sometimes I find I'll do the same thing over more than once. And one thing I do to check my spells, if they're effective, is I'll do a reading on after I do the spell to see if it clicked at all.
Right.
I had one spell literally take 10 years.
Please. Oh my God.
It wasn't a hard spell, but it was very special. And I just kept checking with the cards, and it kept saying, it's going to happen. It's going to happen. I said, yeah, right. And it was just someone I wanted to meet. And I'll tell that story another time. And I ended up meeting this person. It wasn't that big a deal, but when it happened, it all made sense. It was like right for that person. It was right the way it happened. I couldn't believe it actually was correct. I mean, that's why I said, okay, I didn't think this was going to happen. Therefore, there's something bigger than me out there. I just kept, every now and then, maybe once a year, I check in on it and say, no, don't worry, it's going to happen. And I was like, yeah, come on, you're just pulling my leg now, Tarot.
But 10 years, that's persistent. That is discipline. And that's what I say. When you can do spells that are very strong, if you have the right intention and you have that will, and you have it, because 10 years, I don't think I could do that for 10 years.
I didn't. I just did this. It wasn't really, it was a wish spell. It was something I uttered, but it was like a spell. For me, saying things out loud with enthusiasm and intent is part of spell and letting it go. Again, that I'm going to let go of how it's going to happen. And you have to know exactly what you want. And you have to really want it. You can't just think you want it. So anyway, it's amazing how things have a ripple effect. And we're getting a little closer to the end. I did want to pitch my book, which I normally don't do, but it is about love, and it just came out. It is called Fire Burning on the River. Oh, wow. I self-published it, and it's about love. It's Dohas of Devotion and Ecstasy. So I wrote this in my late 20s and 30s. And they're Buddhist devotional poems, but I was also really into searching for love as a young woman. So my relationships are mixed in. The Doha is a form of spiritual poetry that is an expression or utterance of your experiences. And usually people think of Rumi and Mirabai, but you don't have to be a realized being to have an experience. This is just a form of poetry. And some of them are very structured. These are not structured, and some are not, depending on the poet itself. So I was really into the Doha. I had read Mirabai more than Rumi. And so it's available on Amazon under my name, Krista Schwimmer, and it just came out very recently, so I'm very excited about it. And there's definitely some love poems in there, and some that I'm a little embarrassed about even.
I'm going to get that book.
So, I mean, it's odd to be a little shy and write love poems, but I used to give love poetry to people I had crushes on.
Wow, that's very impactful.
And it was really frightening, and I did it anyway. And I think, wow, I'm really glad I did that. And most of the time it's very well received. And I gave my grandmother a poem of love, and it was the nicest thing I ever did for her, I think, because she just treasured it. She'd given me this pink flower, a rose, and I wrote about this rose because it just wouldn't die. It was just, it lasted and lasted. It had it from her garden.
Wow.
And then it was just a poem of love about her. It was really simple. I didn't think it was really that great a poem, but she treasured it. So that's why I said, to me it wasn't a great poem, but to her, it showed how much I loved her. And she showed it to her therapist.
That is so sweet.
So you never know. Poetry, I think, is definitely can be just a spell, or
it's love in a written word, in a written manner. Yeah.
So it's, but there's so many simple ways we can. I love that story that you told about the woman with the wine. And
my God, I will never forget it.
That's so beautiful.
I'm going to write
like
about
a scene from a movie.
But it's not. Let me ask you so quickly, if we have time.
We're pretty much winding down. You have like 50 seconds.
So what I'm going to do is read a poem by Nikita Gill. She's a millennium young woman. She has amazing poetry. It's called The Dance. And it's, I will not have you without the darkness that hides within you. I will not let you have me without the madness that makes me. If our demons cannot dance, neither can we.
Oh, that's lovely.
I love that too. So think about that when you want to do a spell on someone.
Exactly. Well, thank you. That was really wonderful. We
Oh,
loved
I had
having you
fun.
here.
Thank you so much.
And thank you, everyone, for joining the show. We look forward to next week when we have, I think it's Merle on the show. Until then, have a great week, and we'll see you then.